Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's panel. We're going to talk about transatlantic distribution and finance models, and we have a esteemed guest, Tom Quinn, the founder and CEO of Neon. We like to call him the Palme d'Or Whisperer because his company has had the last 4 Palme d'Or winners of the Cannes Film Festival. Welcome, Tom. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian.
My name is Christian Jungen. I'm the artistic director of the Zurich Film Festival, and I have the privilege to be here because Switzerland is this year's country of honor at the Marché. And I would like to thank our friends and partners of promotion agency Swiss Films, Nico and Andreas, for putting all together. It's good to be in a partnership with you. Thank you so much. The Zurich Film Festival has its 20 years anniversary. It was founded in 2005. At the time, I was there as a film critic when they held a press conference, and nobody thought that it's necessary to have another film festival. They built it up. Recently, The Guardian ran a charts with the 10 best film festivals of Europe, and Zurich was on number 10 there. And there was a quote I like a lot. It was saying, if Venice and Cannes are the grandparents of European film festivals, Zurich is the trendy teenager. So if you haven't been there, it's about time. I'm running the festival for 5 years now. I've been a film critic before. I have written books on festivals, one called Hollywood in Gun with a dollar S, the love-hate relationship between Hollywood and Cannes. But before we start, we've brought a clip on our festival, and please have a look.
Know I was going to feel like I'm feeling right now, which is really very, very touched.
So I'm really proud to bring it to Zurich to show everybody tonight. I heard it's a packed out crowd. Our movie was like the first one to sell out here at the festival, so I'm really excited to see how the Europeans like it.
C'est un œil qui va me regarder tout le temps, là.
I'm very grateful and extremely touched, and I shall remember Zurich.
It's a marvelous city, and this is really a wonderful film festival.
Thank you. The Zurich Film Festival has 2 goals. We want to discover new voices. We have a feature and a documentary competition where we show first, second, and third films by a director. And we want to be a showcase for the most highly anticipated fall and winter titles. We're a big audience festival with over 130,000 tickets sold. So for us, it's important to have talents in attendance. And we try to bring the up-and-coming talents in an exchange with the veterans. And we also have a industry conference called the Zurich Summit, the Davos of the film industry, as it was called by a trade paper. And Tom, you're running Neon, which has a lot of European films, and you did the honor to us to attend the festival in Zurich. Why did you come, and why do you keep coming back to the Zurich Film Festival?
Well, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and in my younger days, I would always venture out to discover one new festival a year. I do that less so in my current tenure, but Zurich was looming large because I'd been to Locarno, and I thought I really enjoyed Locarno. I loved the Grand Piazza, and I said, you know, I should give Zurich a shot. And the thing that I did not expect was that Zurich is this thriving town with an incredible exhibition scene, beautiful, gorgeous theaters, an incredible lake, not unlike Locarno, but this huge, massive industry summit. And it is a collection of some of the most interesting film executives that attend this really groundbreaking, I think, quite informative discussion about the state of the industry. And to me, that's sort of the homework that we do during the day, and then at night, going out to dinner, having direct access to talent in a way that there's a certain calmness and accessibility that you don't always find at festivals. And to me, that is, you know, going to dinner and having to sit next to Luca Guadagnino, what an evening.
I love to hear that, because we try to be a boutique festival, which is a bit more informal. Here, everybody is very busy at Sundance or Berlin too, but in Zurich, you have time to meet up. But is it just a nice weekend, or can you do business out of such a summit weekend?
It's an incredibly nice weekend. Zurich is a beautiful city. You know, many Aperol spritzes to be had, but I have actually conducted an incredible amount of business there. We launched our Neon International group this year. It's our first year on the Croisette that's supporting Neon Productions. And I met our head of Neon International, Kristen Figueroa, at the Zurich Film Festival for the first time. And I would not have met her without the Zurich Film Festival. Even though she's American, this is where we finally connected.
Yeah. Well, thanks for these kind words on Zurich, but let's focus on your company now, Neon. You launched it 7 years ago. In German, there is a proverb saying that the 7th year is like damned. I don't know if that translates or it exists in English too. What was the idea? I mean, you've been with, you started as a publicist at DDA, you've been with Magnolia, a Weinstein company. Why did you launch Neon? What was the idea at the beginning?
So it's been a long, slow journey to this point. I worked for Sam Goldwyn Jr. at the Samuel Goldwyn Company, one of the oldest distributors, producers in the world. And I spent 7 years with him there, and then went to go work for Mark Cuban and Eamon Bowles at Magnolia for 7 years, and sort of learned how to buy movies, distribute movies, and then decided that, you know, I wanted to do something where I had a little more control over the movies that I was, and the size of movies that we had access to. And lo and behold, I launched my own boutique label at the Weinstein Company called Radius, which I was there for 4 years. Created that with my business partner, Jason Janego. And we had a really incredible run. We had a really incredible awards run, sort of reinvented the paradigm of distribution by combining VOD and theatrical in a way that it was no longer a dumping ground. It was a path to creating really successful, meaningful, big-time movies. And movies like Citizen4, movies like 20 Feet from Stardom, Bachelorette, Goodnight Mommy, Man of Tai Chi, and the last film I released there, second to last film, was It Follows. And the success of It Follows grossed close to $15 million. And what's interesting about that film is we'd set up this thing called the Audible. The release strategy being, we will have a VOD date that's set up within 2 weeks of its theatrical launch, if in fact the audience chooses and shows up to prove that this could be a wide release in a limited footprint, then we will eliminate the VOD window and we will go wide. And lo and behold, Thursday night at the ArcLight in Los Angeles, $6,000 out of the gate. And I knew it was a wide release. And so contacted all the VOD providers who were in on this release strategy, and they said, great, go wide, we'll see you in 3 months. And, to me, that was the perfect opportunity as a company at Radius to take all the things that we had learned with VOD, to eliminate some of the barrier to entry, the huge P&A costs to launching a horror film that was well reviewed, bought it here in Critics Week in Cannes, but was sort of a new dawn of horror, something that I think a film that created all the other elevated subsequent horror that followed, things like Hereditary, Midsommar, and David Robert Mitchell. I don't know if you know him as a director, but incredible director, and I think deserves a lot of credit for having created this chapter of horror. That was where the audience decided what's the best release plan, and turned out to gross $15 million. And we now at Neon are producing the sequel to that film called They Follow.
So you put on Neon, and why the name? What's behind the name Neon?
It's the first name that popped into my mind, and 2 years later, after I think having bought close to 500 URLs and created a whole bunch of other names, it was the name that I just came back to, and it's this beautiful fraternal relationship that it has with cinema. And for those of you who are Neon fans, the actual artistry of Neon, the first neon sign appeared in Los Angeles in the U.S. in 1923 above a Packard auto dealership. That's the same year that the Hollywoodland sign was erected up in the hills in Hollywood. And so two things that are very sort of iconic that represent film, Hollywood. I felt like it was a match made in heaven, but more importantly, it represents, I think, the ethos of what we do at Neon. A lot of my favorite films, whether it's Blade Runner or Drive, Neon appears in these movies as something that is sort of a timeless glow, but also on the marquee of these movie theaters that show these movies. The most extraordinary marquees in the world all have Neon. And I felt that this marriage between the two is exactly what I want to embrace. These kinds of movies that I think push the envelope of what cinema can be, that appeal to a younger audience, but also in theater, these beautiful movie palaces all around the world.
You should court Wim Wenders. He has a lot of neon signs in his movies.
Well, this year we finally got to work with them on Perfect Days. Yes.
So you have a lot of European movies. You started with North American titles, and you launched them in the US in a time when it was getting difficult. I mean, in New York or in the big cities, the intelligentsia knew the new wave directors, the Italians, but this was lost and it got quite challenging. How did you manage to launch foreign language films in the North American market?
Well, most people would say the Neon business plan was a terrible business plan. It really didn't have much else to offer except just a simple belief in cinema. And I think the two other additions to that were, one, completely agnostic about genre, country of origin, size. I view our entire slate as equally valuable, regardless of subtitles, whether it's a documentary or a horror film. To me, any year at Neon represents the best cinema the world has to offer, and we want to support it in theater. The second part was, a lot of people dismiss an under 35 audience as an audience that doesn't appreciate classic cinema, and that's just not true. And a lot of directors that we work with, we talk about, talking to Bong Joon-ho about Hitchcock, the strand that exists between his love of his movies and Parasite is very clear. But Parasite, in fact, turns out to be, the first film that an audience that might be, I talked to a lot of 14 and 15-year-olds who this was the first foreign language film that they saw. Granted, the movie grossed over $53 million in the U.S. and was the first foreign language Best Picture winner. But it proved to me that there is a very growing audience that hungers for original content from all around the world, without, as Bong Joon-ho said, those subtitles are one very small barrier to get over to discover this entire new world of cinema.
But how do you communicate? How do you market those titles? I mean, film criticism used to be very, very important for elder generations. It's not that important anymore. How do you reach out to those younger audiences? Is it social media or?
So we try to engage with our audience as much as possible and engage with them in a way that we can understand, little ways. I, Tonya, sort of a big Hollywood production made independently that we bought, one of the first big movies that we bought, 3 Academy nominations, 1 win for Allison Janney for Best Supporting Actress. And this was in our first year of existence. The movie grossed over $30 million, great success. But inside of Hollywood, the idea that we would first launch a red band trailer, a red band meaning with profanity, certain acts of violence that exist in the movie, we decided that, well, this is the movie that we've bought. This is the movie we want to embrace. It's the movie that the director, Craig Gillespie, producer Margot Robbie, all said, yeah, absolutely, go out with a red band for us. But I can tell you that amongst some of the agents who were representing the clients and other hired producer consultants, awards consultants would say, you should never do that inside of Hollywood. You should absolutely go out with a green band trailer. You will offend Academy voters. And we're like, well, that's just not who we are. So being confident about who you are, what the movie is, and, little things like Anatomy of a Fall. That movie is extremely classic in the way that, it could be scenes from a marriage in one sense, but in another sense, we have no aversion to having fun inside of a very serious subject matter. The idea that Messi the dog is at the Academy luncheon. The idea that, this incredible 50 Cent cue is a big part of our social media campaign for the film. These are things that we feel very comfortable doing, and I'm not sure that a lot of other companies that exist as traditional distributors around foreign language films have embraced the same ethos.
By the way, I remember we had a coffee meeting here last year. I just saw Anatomy of a Fall and was saying it's going to win the Palme d'Or. It would have been your 4th. It became your 4th. And of course, we all thought it's going to be the French candidate to the Oscars, which it didn't become. Did it actually help that they picked another one and it became kind of the film you had to embrace because there was he was unfair handled by the French?
It's not a perfect system, and as I like to say, it's not Eurovision. One song, one country. 2 incredible films, 3 incredible films can exist from one country and should be equally represented at the Academy Awards. Every company should have an opportunity to submit a film, though. That I absolutely appreciate. But the idea that Anatomy of a Fall is not selected to participate in the Best Foreign Language Film race, to me, was it's a travesty. And while I don't dislike the other film that was selected, I think both films should exist inside of that race. And unfortunately, I'm used to this. We've won for films that, may not have been the most highly coveted films of that year out of France, that were selected. And we've lost for films that I thought should have been automatically selected. Films like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I felt was absolutely a missed opportunity. So having been through this before, we immediately said, and by the way, I want to be clear, I guaranteed the French committee, the selection committee who sat on the board to pick these films, I said, I've been in this room many times. I've never promised you an Academy Award. This is the first year that I promise you we will win the best foreign language film.
You went to see them and make a plea for...
They pick 7 people every year from different parts of the industry, and I said to them, this is the first year that we promise you we will win. It'll be the first French Academy Award since Indochine. And so even with that promise, we did not get selected.
Is it still, well, I mean, as an American distribution company, you're in the lead, promoting foreign film for international, for the Oscar for Best International Film. Is it still worth put out all this money?
Absolutely. It has changed a bit, certainly, but being a Best Picture nominee is Anatomy of a Fall, Palme d'Or winner, and/or last year's Palme d'Or winner, Triangle of Sadness, also Neon Film, another Best Picture, nominee. It's huge. It's massive. The combination of both of those things, the Palme d'Or sets up the theatrical run, the Best Picture nomination sets up the home entertainment run. So all of those things pay off, huge dividends. But the other part I would say, and this is key to Zurich's success, the growing voting body at the Academy has become more global. It sort of represents our agnostic taste about film. the Academy voters are global. Our tastes about film are global. And so they've overlapped with each other. And I think the time of year that we come to Zurich is a really incredible time to help foster some more attention around these.
Absolutely. I mean, the summit we mentioned has about 150 guests, and half of them are Academy members, and lots of films took off in Zurich. I want to make the case of All Quiet on the Western Front, which wasn't really noticed at Toronto. We had the European premiere, and a lot of the summit people went to see it in Zurich, Michael Barker and others, and that's really how it started. You are a good cognoscenti of European cinema. Tell us a bit about your own biography. You've grown up in Europe, right?
Yes, so my father was a basketball coach professionally in Europe for many, many years when I was a child. And so I grew up in Holland, Sweden, Belgium, and
you speak all these languages?
I still get around with Swedish. Jag kan prata svenska. But Dutch and Flemish still somewhere in my lexicon, but not readily available. But I do think it's informed my interest and, again, also very agnostic worldview about entertainment.
How did you become a cinephile or a movie lover? I mean, if your father is a basketball player, you could have ended up as a sportsman.
Well, you know, I'm only 6 foot, so even though I dreamed of being Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as a 12-year-old, it was just never going to pan out for me. I fell in love with performing, and as a young kid, I loved disco dancing. I don't know what to tell you. And that graduated into falling in love with acting, but moving to LA, I quickly fell in love with movies in a way that I felt that this would be enough of a creative outlet for me to, one of the first big movies I worked on in PR was Breaking the Waves. And yes, that movie depressed the shit out of me, but it also changed my life. It really, I fell in love with cinema and Robbie Mueller and Stellan Skarsgård and Emily Watson. I mean, it was just sort of an incredible experience that got me excited about distribution as well.
How important is it to have a close relationship with the directors, with the auteurs, to succeed with their films in North America? I know that you're close to the likes of Alice Rohrwacher or Bong Joon-ho. Is that part of your job, or is it just a question of passion?
Most people would say it's part of the job, but for me, it's part of the joy. I want to get to know these people as humans, and the more human they are, I've always found the greater the art. And we just bought Julia Ducournau's next film, Alpha, and I have to say, she is so extraordinary. Titan was something we chased. We also released that film before we even started the company. I'd seen Raw, and I thought, well, whatever we do, if we are successful enough, we should do Julia's next film. And so went to Paris. 2 years later, the fruits of that labor paid off with Titan. And I will tell you, I read the script for Titan, and I can't say I understood it. It sort of was beyond my own comprehension. But seeing the film, she made that script 100%. And it made perfect sense to me. And I just think she's working at such a brilliant, extraordinary level that her next film, I think, is going to push the boundaries even further. And to me, she represents the future of cinema. But what is very clear about Julia, she's a human first. And not unlike Bong Joon-ho, also has this incredible sense of humor. And you can see both of them working their personalities into their films. So it's a joy to get to know these people as humans and to have a relationship outside of the work. I hate work being so transactional. I want it to be part of our life. And I think in some ways that's why Neon is a really fun place to work, because we really try to embrace a work-life balance that it's not just about showing up at 9 a.m. and leaving at 6. It's about living this as a pursuit worth investing your soul into.
You're a company that can keep their people. You told me that you just promoted your first intern to vice president. What's the culture at Neon, and how do you deal with, because here in Europe we have a headache with the Gen Z, that they move around very quickly. 1 year there, maybe 1.5 there, and then they go on a journey around the world. How do you keep your folks in the house?
Yes, the older I get, you know, at some point you're not unlike your own father, right? There is a clear generational divide, but Sarah Colvin was an intern at Neon 6 years ago, straight out of NYU, and just was promoted to VP of Acquisitions. And so the idea that her whole career has been at Neon is super proud of it. But all of the department heads have been with the company since inception. And while we're only 50 people, which I think is relatively small for a company.
Really? I have the impression I read about Neon hiring executives all the time.
So we have doubled in size in the last 2 years. And this is part of us going into production, international sales. Some of the films have gotten bigger. Doesn't mean that we're going to leave some of the smaller already films. It just means that we do have more wide releases on the slate than we have had previously. But it is an absolute commitment to work-life balance, never compromising the movies that we sign on to, believing in what we're doing. And that mission is pervasive throughout everybody who works at the company.
And how many of the 50 people are at Cannes now?
Oh, God. I think 12.
Okay.
12 to, and next week will be 15. Yes, we love Cannes. We love watching our competitors' movies. We love seeing as many movies as possible in competition. I stay all week. I'll be here till the bitter end next week. And it's just fun going into the Lumiere when everybody departs and watching, catching up on some of the movies that you missed.
Absolutely. The headquarters are in New York, but you work out of LA. Are the weights shifting towards LA? We have the impression the streamers are there. Okay, the studios are shrinking, but still the music plays in LA more and more.
Yes, I moved to LA in 2019, launched the LA office for Neon, and brought a couple New Yorkers out with me. I would say that we are almost, the New York office is still larger than the LA office, but the industry, to me, in my heart, is still in New York. It's a more collegiate environment. It's about cinema. It's not about the business. And I know that sounds somewhat naive and romantic, but it's true. And a lot of my friends are former competitors that, you know, we would all go to each other's premieres to celebrate each other's work. And LA is not like that. It's a very 9-to-5 town, very lunch-oriented. And it's not to say there aren't cinema lovers in LA, but there's an entire other business, the studio business, the streaming business, which, you know, I'm not sure is always in the same backyard as we are.
Mm-hmm. I just came back from a 2 weeks vacation in the US. I traveled around Washington, New York, Philadelphia, Virginia Beach, and I was shocked how many movie theaters are closed in all those cities. How do you see the marketplace in the US? Are the movies still the pinnacle of the social conversation, or are we becoming the new museums with built-in interest group but not being the mass medium anymore?
I think there is an oversubscription in the exhibition marketplace. There are too many screens. The idea of going to see a movie and there are 5 people in the movie theater, to me, is you know, sometimes the best character in any movie is an energized, full audience.
You prefer having less screens but bigger audience in the
full
seats?
screens. I think, you know, before the pandemic, there were almost double the movies in the marketplace. Again, oversubscribed. And I think quality is coveted in a way that it wasn't previously. You know, the idea that a lot of slates for a lot of distributors in the aughts and the teens were programmers. The idea that they sort of had this same thing as streamers, I think, have been looking for, an attraction, but not really an ability to play through for an audience, to sell tickets. And I think audiences now, both inside of streaming, inside of theatrical, they're coming to see quality. And in some ways, quality is in the eye of the beholder, but I think another way to look at it is authenticity, that you can't cheat the sale. You can't cheat the positioning of your films. You have to believe in what you're doing. And I think the audience smells you a mile away if you're not doing that.
But are we doing, as an industry, enough to reach out to people? On this vacation, my daughter is 10 years old. She plays basketball, and I was shocked to see she knows every American basketball player, LeBron James, Sabrina Ionescu, female players. She hardly knows any movie stars, and I asked her, why do you know all these players? Yeah, they're on YouTube, they're on Instagram. So I wonder why. I mean, when I was young, at her age, movie stars were the idols.
Yeah, and I think movie stars losing a certain amount of currency is not a bad thing. That it becomes about the movie, it becomes about the story, it becomes about the subject. But I would say to your daughter, the NBA app is awesome. And it interconnects audiences with players in a way that, you know, all the stats are there. And I feel that our industry is disjointed, overly competitive, not working together. The idea that VOD providers aren't working directly with theaters and distributors and content providers to streamline the efficiency with which how we communicate with an audience. And those that can communicate directly with their audience are these siloed ventures. Mm-hmm. The idea that a streamer has a direct audience that it can speak to and sell other wares to is not of benefit to the rest of the industry. Whereas trailer play inside of theaters is a communal, pollinated success. I have a huge hit. I'm showing A24 trailers on my movies. They're then able to succeed based on there being a ripe audience with eyeballs inside of the theater. And that, to me, is what's lost in the current approach to entertainment.
But is it good for you as Neon? Also, the indie scene is shrinking. I mean, there is A24, there's Neon, there is Lionsgate, a couple of others, but it's maybe half of what it used to be 25 years ago. Is that good for you, or is it preoccupying?
I think in some ways it is shrinking, but in other ways it's the lows are lower, the highs are higher. And a great example is Anatomy of a Fall. Top 12 grossing film, French film of all time. Great. What it did on home entertainment, extraordinary. I think did almost 12 times what was a really good expectation. So the idea that this movie is doing something massive across home entertainment that is a foreign language film. Yes, it has English in it. Yes, it was had 5 nominations, 1 win. But it was reaching an audience well beyond the sort of expectation and or the traditional expectation of what those films have done previously in home entertainment. And that to me means that a certain type of movie is no longer of interest. Authenticity, quality, and having no aversion to soliciting and putting this film in front of a younger audience, I think takes a certain amount of confidence, intent, and belief. You know, I'm still sort of extrapolating where we're at, and if I were to simply look at the numbers in the U.S. as one territory, the per film average for our specialized slate, things that are traditionally smaller films, documentaries, foreign language films, has been really robust. The per film gross on each of these films over the last 4 years, even in the pandemic, is, if you were to look at those numbers, it looks like the middle aughts for quality foreign language specialized film.
What is the role of film festivals? Festivals are struggling as well. I mean, Sundance is looking for a new host city. Every festival is in the reds with the numbers.
I think festivals are hugely important, and we rely heavily on festivals. I will tell you, the Palme d'Or itself, post Parasite, Titan, Triangle of Sadness, and Anatomy of a Fall, you know, I can't say that it was the award that meant something commercially in the U.S. for the last over the last 24 years. All the previous winners, I can't tell you that it meant something, but having won this the last 4 times, we test all of our films. The 5th reason why people came to see the test screening for Parasite was that it won the Palme d'Or. The number 1 reason why people came to see Anatomy of a Fall was that it won the Palme d'Or. So that progression and success is a real huge indicator for what festivals mean. But other, you know, it's funny. There's this old adage that, you know, good movies find audiences on their own, and it's part of it is true. I always believe a good movie will find an audience, but it needs a communal support system. And Zurich, Toronto, Sundance, Telluride. I mean, these are all cumulatively part of how we launch and position our movies. And I think without them, we'd have to recreate that experience in our own way.
Hopefully they're going to live for another 75 years or so. I want to open it up. You can ask Tom questions too. Just raise your hand. There is a microphone coming your way. The lady in the second row.
Hi, my name is Julia. I love everything you've been talking about. It's really inspiring to hear about your company, Neon. And I have a question about how you discuss how you communicate with directors and what it means for them to make a film successful financially or profit-wise. Like, what do you recommend for young directors who want to get into the industry and also make a film that will be successful in your eyes?
Well, I used to think I knew what made a film successful, and I've since given up on that. I think it's more important to have a holistic vision for all the things that you want to support. It's easier for me because we have a full slate of films. But if we are completely intentional about what we're doing, in the aggregate, I think it'll work. At some point, somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, buddy, the last 3 years, nothing's worked. Maybe your time is up. You're out. But I think you have to do what you know. And I mean, the idea that Oppenheimer is this huge, massive success boggles my mind. And yet it makes perfect sense. He's a huge director. Everybody signed up for this this investigation into one man's process. Okay, it's about process and the jilted ego between two guys. It was this huge global sensation. I mean, it was bigger. I mean, it could have literally been a play with two people, right? But between everybody's intention about what it was going to be, we all were swept up in this extraordinary release. And I think it's a fantastic film. And I watch Dunkirk all the time. I love Dunkirk. So, but it's inspiring to know that this is the film he wanted to make. Everybody came around. Universal did an incredible job with it. And so I think filmmakers should have a little confidence in what they want to do. And if it doesn't work, you know, I think be honest about why it didn't work. You know, producing films is really difficult. Making a great film is sometimes weirdly by accident. And just because you had a good time on the set doesn't mean it's going to be great. So I think you have to be honest about what you want, and setting expectations for financial success, critical success, award success, I think is very important. And it's okay to say, you're dying to be a Best Picture nominee. I don't care about money. But that's your expectation. Great, I know how to do that, but we also have to survive as a business, so I can do it at this level to make sure that we have a fighting chance. And when and if it doesn't work, you will have complete access to everything that we've done, and we accept that not everything works. That's the hard part. But that we're willing to work together. It's like an open marriage, right? Not an open marriage, sorry. It's not an open marriage.
Business-wise.
It's an arranged marriage. You know, it's like we've been forced together, but we're willing to work and put faith and trust in each other, which I think there's real value to that in the filmmaker-distributor relationship. But if you don't know what you want, I think it's important to have that conversation with the people around you and then eventually your distributor. One exercise that we do at Neon, which is not beloved by all filmmakers, I will say, but it creates this conversation of honesty. What are the 7 reasons this film's not going to work? It forces us to be honest about ourselves, about the film, about what we might think about the release of the film, and it forces the director to hear it, you know? And I can't say that I created this exercise. I don't know why 7. 7 is a dangerous number, I guess. But Errol Morris, long ago, we worked on The Unknown Known. Went to lunch with him, met him for the first time, had already signed up to do the movie. And he's like, he asked me, what do you think of the 7 reasons the film's not going to work? And I was like, oh, I haven't thought of that. He's like, well, good for you. I have 7 reasons. He pulls out this list and he tells me, and I was like, oh, thank God you have the 7 reasons because I don't want to offend you. But I think honesty is always going to, you know, I think deliver a great relationship and expectations for where you're going.
Thank you very much. That's a good exercise also if you're in a different position to ask 7 reasons why they should say no, not to come to your festival, not to want. Yeah.
What are those 7 reasons? What are those 7 reasons?
It changes for the film. Wrong time of year, wrong star, bad reviews, convoluted messaging, whatever it may be. The idea that Citizen 4, one of the reasons was, you know, is the film illegal? Is it too hot to touch? Is it really cinema? Is it just a bird's eye view of what happened? And as it turned out, it was this incredible Jean Le Carré novel. You know, it was a story that just happened to be true that you were witness to. And it was so effective as such that it almost never got to the subject of what it was chronicling. The idea that surveillance is really what's at the heart of the film. But most people were just swept up in what an incredible film it was. So we succeeded in one way and failed in another.
Good morning. First of all, thank you so much for your kind advices. I am Swiss, I am film scoring composer, so the passion is music for me. So what do you believe and what do you think about music and about vibration in a film?
I think music is hugely important. You know, over the last 3 years, we've been making our own films, and I find that sound design and score, in some ways, almost more important than the edit. The edit, obviously, related to story, but the fine-tuning of the edit, I think, less important than those 2 elements. They literally create the entire aura of the world, as if they are their own character. A new production of ours, Cuckoo, starring Hunter Schafer, by German director Tillman. The sound design is amazing. Granted, the film is shot on 35 millimeter, crazy. But the sound design and the score, I think, bring this whole other level of world building to that.
Thank you so much.
You started, I'm going to ask a question in the meantime, then you have a chance to ask yours. As a distribution company, you went into production and now you're also in sales. What is, with Kristen Figueroa, you mentioned you knew at Zurich, what is the ambition with the sales arm of the company? Well, are you going to do your own films or also others?
So we are doing both, but the inspiration was simple. The opportunity to support and finance filmmakers from all over the world. So the idea that we've been working with these filmmakers here domestically for one territory, some of them as pre-buys. Titan we pre-bought, Parasite we pre-bought, but it's not a huge leap to then imagine yourself being the financier and the producer. So the idea that we would bring our ethos of Neon as a producer financier to filmmakers all around the world and selling them here with our Neon International sales unit with Kristen, it seemed like a logical growth.
But is it your dream to become kind of a fully integrated studio, or you're growing step by step, or you don't have that master plan for your company?
I'm in love with cinema, and whatever I can do to continue fostering and being a home for auteurs and cinema at Neon is really the dream. And so when we were asked when we won Best Picture for Parasite, somebody said, well, this changes everything. I was like, no, this is actually the realization of everything that we wanted to accomplish.
Yes?
Hi, Tom. What is your outlook towards animation films at Neon?
Completely agnostic. I know very little about animation, but we have done. We did Flea many years ago, and the idea that film in itself is agnostic. It is a documentary existing as an animated film to protect the identity of its subject, and to have the will and ridiculous, crazy idea that we can get this film nominated as a best animated film, a best documentary, and a best international film, which it did. It was sort of ludicrous that we said it, but we're like, oh, we believe it's possible. And to bring that story around the world, I think there was no other way to do that film. And credit to Jonas Rasmussen for making an incredible film. Last year in Cannes, I bought this film called Robot Dreams. Silent. There's no dialogue. Incredible score. And I fell in love with this movie. I mean, I think I paid a lot for it. Couldn't resist. And, having lived in New York for 20 years, this movie chronicles New York in the 80s in a way that made me so nostalgic for my old New York. You can see the old World Trade Center, and the restaurants that exist in that film have this sort of bittersweet nostalgia around it, and it's just so perfectly executed, and based on a graphic novel by the Chicago writer. And honestly, the only part of it that I think differentiates this film or Flea for me as an animated film is that I can trick my kid into watching both. That for whatever reason, this is a much easier sell to him, and so he saw Flea. We did an English language track with Riz Ahmed, and so he saw that, and we are. I'm not going to tell you here, but we're doing something really special around Robot Dreams that I think if you have any kids, if you're in the U.S., you'll be very excited about it. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. More questions?
Hi. It works? Yeah, it works. Hi, I'm a producer, and I admire for what you're doing with your company and, the outcome. As a producer, I just want to find out what is the best way to approach you, in what stage, like development, production, sales. Of course, there are different stages, but what is the best way?
Any stage works. Even after you've sold it to 3 other companies and 20 years later, I bought Old Boy, which is a lifelong pursuit of mine, which premiered in Cannes here 20 years ago in 2004. It's one of my favorite films of all time, and we re-released it this year, and it grossed 1.8 million. It was a huge success, like almost triple what it did originally when it was released in 2006. So that's just a joke that you come to us anytime that you're ready to talk. Production, pitch, no attachments. We get blind submissions all the time. The more realize the idea it's easier for us to sign up. We've financed a film, Josh Oppenheimer's The End, which is a musical starring Tilda Swinton. Josh is well known for having had an extraordinary career in nonfiction, 2 Academy Award nominated documentaries, and this was his first fiction film as a musical. Things that, his filmography does not dictate that he has this certain expertise, but his director's statement was so fine-tuned and eloquent that it gave us all the confidence that this was going to be an incredibly special film. So you have to know what it is you're making. You have to have a confidence about it. And, the other thing is, I don't mind if I'm the last company that you pitch as long as it's still available. I don't care. We might be the only right company for you. So,
and one thing I can testify, Tom is approachable, so you don't have to be afraid.
You never know what you're going to find. Yeah.
By the way, have you ever had a Swiss film in the lineup?
No, but
it's about time. It's about time.
However, I did fall in love with your audience award winner last year.
Julia's Verschwinden.
Yes.
About the ballet dancer, which after pregnancy went back to the opera house.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What a gorgeous, beautiful film about. I mean, the last film that I'd seen about dancing to be, I think, so evocative, not just about the art form, but having this sort of human side to it was Pina by Wim Wenders. And this filmmaker, I met many years prior at Zurich.
Laura Kerr, Becoming Julia is the English title.
Yeah.
Very good. So I introduced you to wrap up as the Palme d'Or Whisperer. You had 7 Palme d'Ors in a row.
You say 7?
4, sorry.
Wow.
4, but the goal is 7, of course.
7? I guess we forgot.
Tell us something about your films in this year's competition.
So we we're very director focused, and so Sean Baker's Honora, we have long wanted to work with them. So this is in competition, obviously up for the Palme d'Or award, and if not for that film, I would say that I believe that this year's Palme d'Or winner is still available for multiple territories.
Okay.
So I'll keep my American friends and peers and competitors on their toes.
Thank you very much for talking to us, for sharing your knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Quinn. And thank you guys for being here. The Zurich Film Festival runs October 3 to 13. Put it in your agenda. Thank you.